On behalf of ILSC US and Canada and the Infant Nutrition Science Coalition, thank you all very much for joining our first public meeting. Wherever you're joining us from, we have 99 people registered from all over the world, including North America, Europe, Asia, and even Australia, although I figure our Australian colleagues are probably going to be watching the recording, but I did want to say hello to them as well, even if it is 1 a.m. over on their time. I think this indicates that there's a huge interest and commitment to infant nutrition, and we have a lot that we can collaborate on and discuss. And so, as I just mentioned, my name is Cypress Lynx. I'm a scientific project manager at ILSC. Before I joined ILSC 3 months ago, I was an associate program officer at the National Academy of Sciences Food and Nutrition Board, and now I have the tremendous honor to facilitate this really incredible coalition. I'm really excited to share our work with you today. I do want to point out one disclaimer before I continue, in that I'm not a subject matter expert in human milk science or infant formula, but I'm really fortunate to be joined by many of our members who indeed are the experts. So thank you all again for joining me. So the purpose of this call today is really to introduce the INSC, so that's the Infant Nutrition Science Coalition, its facilitators, and the current status of our work, while this meeting also serves as a way to update our over 17 members. It's also a way to introduce ourselves to some new faces. I see some new faces, at least to me, in the audience. We do hope to have time for questions at the end, but please feel free to type your questions into the chat box as well throughout the presentation. Some folks, again, we have some of our members on, our steering committee members, and they may be able to answer your questions while we are going through our presentation. And then if we don't get to your question, my inbox is always open. I have my contact information at the end that you'll be able to see what my email address is if you don't already have it, and you're more than welcome at any time to send your questions there. As a reminder, today's meeting is being recorded, and the recording and slides will be circulated to everyone that registered. And you're welcome and encouraged to share the recording and the slides with your colleagues who either didn't register or couldn't make it today, any of that. This is a public meeting. And so really, to go over our agenda, I'm going to shortly turn it over to Paul and Sharon to get us started on kind of this background of our human milk science consortium and how we got to where we are today. Then we're going to go over the facilitators of the Infant Nutrition Science Coalition. We'll go into then what is now the INSC, and then we'll provide some progress updates on some of our work. And then finally, I will go over how to get involved with the INSC. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our co-chairs, Paul Hanlon and Sharon Donovan, to give a brief background of how we got to where we are today. So Sharon, I'm not sure if you're on yet. Is Sharon here? I don't think so. Paul, would you be willing to step in Sharon's place?
Yeah, I sure can. Hi, everybody. I'm Paul Hanlon. I'm at Abbott Nutrition, and I'm one of the chairs of the Infant Nutrition Science Coalition, along with Sharon Donovan, who is joining us from the University of Illinois. Not on the call right now, but hopefully she can join us, and hopefully I'll do a good job of representing some of the background on where we are coming from in terms of creating this consortium. So just to kind of set the stage, we always start our meetings with this overarching principle of human milk is the gold standard for infant nutrition. And we know there's a lot of research that has been going on for years and decades on infant nutrition. And we know that there are some reasons that some families are unable to use human milk as nutrition for their infants. And in those cases, infant formula is really the only alternative for these families. We know that there are compositional differences between human milk and infant formula. And really, we also know that based on some of the epidemiology, there are some differences in some outcomes between infants that are either raised on human milk or infant formula. So what we're really trying to do with this consortium is dig further into some of those details, build on the incredible science that's already been done up to this day, but then really try to dig further into what are those compositional differences. How do those actually? Maybe we'll go to the next slide, we're really trying to dig into those fundamental science questions. What are those differences in the composition between human milk and infant formula? How do those differences in composition translate into functional differences that may manifest into different outcomes in those infants? And then we also want to look at developing some additional biomarkers of how do you really measure whether infants are developing normally. So really, the purpose of this consortium, we know it's aligned to a lot of those efforts that are already going on in the scientific community, and we really want to start doing what we can to answer some of these fundamental questions in these three main scientific pillars. If you head to the next slide then, Cypress. So based on kind of that broad principle of like where we want to end up going, we have put together this charter of really what we're trying to get accomplished both in this year, next year, as well as into the future. So the consortium has really identified a number of different activities that we are working towards. And you're going to hear more about at least some of these on the call today. And certainly over the rest of the course of this year, you'll be hearing more about them as well. I'm going to turn this over to, I think, Candace on the Oregon State team pretty soon, and she'll give you some of the background on one of the papers that we're hoping to get out of this effort, and that is a perspectives paper based on what our current understanding of the evidence is. We're going to be taking that perspectives paper and using it to build a workshop that we're hoping to now conduct in Q1 of 2026. So we're still finalizing those dates, but we're really hoping to have this consortium that gets together experts from across the field to have that discussion of some of these fundamental science questions. We then plan, again with Oregon State's help, to draft a consensus paper that comes out of that workshop. And then all along the way in 2025 and in 2026, we're planning to continue to do outreach to the scientific community. We have plans to have some of that outreach happen at two main conferences this year, one being the FASEB conference that I think we're hoping is going to take place sometime later this year. And the other one is the IMGC conference, which is going to be taking place in Europe later in the summer. The last thing that I'll just say is, we see this as very likely the beginning of an effort. We're trying to answer some of those scientific questions today, really come out of the workshop with an understanding of where is there already scientific consensus and where is there still a lack of scientific consensus, and then hopefully start creating some of those roadmaps of what is the science that we need to conduct to get consensus on those questions where there is still outstanding discussion. So this could very easily turn into a multi-year effort. So this is really kind of just the first stage of this work, is really kind of defining where do we still have work to do, and like where do we already have that scientific consensus. So we're really excited on the consortium. We've got a lot of interest. It's great to see so many people on this call today. So appreciate everyone calling in. And I'm going to turn it back to you, Cypress.
Thanks so much, Paul. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time going over the two coordinators of this activity. As Paul alluded to, when we first there was first a request for proposal that was sent out to establish what was called at the time the Human Milk Science Project Consortium. And so I won't go through each and every bullet here, but this is just to give you an idea of how ILSC US and Canada and Oregon State University were selected to lead this project, which is, as you'll see, which has since evolved. In essence, basically our two organizations were selected given our experience and our convening ability. So for those that don't know, who is ILSC? And we're a global nonprofit headquartered in Washington, D.C. We serve as conveners and facilitators. We bring together the leading scientific experts from across sectors to advance research in food, nutrition, health, and sustainability and the environment. You can see our mission here. And as I mentioned, ILSC US and Canada is part of a global nonprofit federation comprised of 10 institutes, as you can see on the map here. We work with over 175 companies, over 2,000 scientists from around the world, and we reach many, many different stakeholders. So while the institutes, each one has their own research priorities and govern themselves independently, all of our institutes are bound by the same bylaws, code of ethics, and principles of scientific integrity, so such as objectivity, transparency, and accessibility to all data. And so ILSI US and Canada was selected to be one of the facilitators for the Human Milk Science Project. And so we accomplish our mission through a variety of different program types, as you can see on the right here. And that's, again, just an example of some of the different kinds of programs that we do. And we all operate within this tripartite model, so engaging academia, industry, and government. And you'll see this model reflected in the Infant Nutrition Science Coalition as well. ILSI US and Canada is led by a governance committee and a science board. And in the interest of time, I won't go into all of that, but I have our link here. Please feel free to take a look at who is on that governance committee and science board to learn more, ilciuscanada.org. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Candace to give an overview of the Moore Family Center at the Oregon State University.
Thanks, Cypress. So I am a program manager at the Moore Family Center here at OSU, and our director is Dr. Dave Dallas. We are, as Paul mentioned, coordinating and facilitating both the perspectives paper and the consensus paper for this particular coalition. The Moore Family Center is a nutrition science hub here in the College of Health at OSU. And we work to advance research in the field of nutrition science and train the next generation of scientists by facilitating synergies among our partner researchers in 6 different nutrition science priority areas, one of which is specific to infant nutrition and milk science. If you could go to the next slide. So at the head of the infant nutrition and milk science priority area is the Dallas Lab. And those working in the Dallas Lab are investigating the biology of human and animal milk by studying a slew of research questions, including milk proteins and peptides and their bioactives and how they relate to gut health, as well as the effects of processing on milk proteins and bioactivities. And also they are investigating how human milk proteins compare with infant formula, which is a really strong link to the work that's being done here at this coalition. I'm going to toss it back over to you, Cypress.
Thanks, Candace. All right, so now we get to dive deep into the INSC. So we're going to go over the mission of the coalition, our current steering committee, and our working projects. And so in a nutshell, the INSC is a collaborative effort among experts across academia, government, and industry to advance research on human milk and infant nutrition. We focus on enhancing scientific understanding of human milk and infant formula composition and how to improve infant health and development, as Paul already alluded to when he went over our key focus areas. While there's not always consensus in this field, all of us, regardless of what sector we're coming from, have the same goal, which is to ensure that every infant grows up healthy no matter what they are fed. And so again, this is a reiteration of our key focus areas for the INSC. You can see our current steering committee here, again, representing that tripartite collaboration and coordination. I'm just going to leave this just for a second so you can take a look. And we'll also show off our brand new website, which you can see the list of our steering committee as well. I wanted to spend a little bit of time to, again, emphasize why a tripartite model is essential for this coalition. And so I've listed out here kind of the roles for every sector to kind of illustrate what this coalition is capable of. And so we know our academic partners are the ones that are generating that foundational research on human milk composition, infant development, and those health outcomes. They develop new research methods. As you saw in our key focus area, we're also looking at NAMs, so new alternative methods and models for research. And they also provide that independent scientific expertise. Our industry partners have that practical and scientific knowledge about formula composition. They work in it every day. They translate scientific findings from academia and government into real-world product implications. And then they support our collaborative research and identify opportunities for innovation in the field. And then, of course, our government partners are the ones that set the regulatory and policy frameworks that we all abide by. And they, with their participation in the INSC, they ensure alignment with policy priorities, regulatory feasibility of what we innovate on, and then, of course, public health goals. And then identify our research gaps and encourage evidence development. Of course, there's some overlap. We don't want to operate in silos, but this is just to give you an idea of why the steering committee and all of the members of the INSC are dedicated to making sure that we have multi-sector participation. I'd be remiss not to bring up the current policy priorities right now. And so I'm highlighting Operation Stork Speed, which is an initiative out of the FDA for improving infant formula, as well as a couple other initiatives that are coming from our current administration. And so as part of Operation Stork Speed, for those that don't know, the FDA released a request for information for infant formula nutrient review. And so right now the FDA has a huge focus on infant formula, maybe more so than before. And there's a lot going on in this agency. So I think the timing is just excellent for the INSC. We're positioned well to provide expertise and align our objectives with the current initiatives. And so just giving a kind of an example here of what the INSC can provide, the administration is looking at research gaps and health outcomes associated with infant feeding. We just learned that that's exactly what the INSC is also geared up for. New data on nutrient requirement considerations, reviewing existing nutrient requirements, and then considering other nutrients. And so now I'll go into kind of where we are currently. So we'll talk about the perspectives paper development, some past and upcoming conferences that Paul alluded to, our current members, and our working group. So I'm going to actually hand it back over to Candace to talk a bit about the perspectives paper.
Okay, so an update on where we're at with the perspectives paper. We've hosted 2 planning meetings in March and April, and developed a collaborative outline and a shared document. As you can imagine, this was quite a process. I always say this could actually become an entire book, but we're trying to narrow it down into a well-developed paper. So we took a while to hone in on the scope and what we wanted to include in the paper. We presented it to the steering committee in May and got feedback from them. We are currently working on assigning sections to specific writing teams. So we opened a survey in April and invited all of the industry partners at the time, as well as academics from 36 different institutions. And we now have figured out that we have writers from 5 different industries, and then we have 11 academics. So that's a pretty manageable size. And we have that divided into section teams that have 5 writers for each section. We have a draft of the paper started, and we're planning to submit to Advances in Nutrition, and we selected that based on the unlimited length and authors and a relatively short review time, because as you'll see on the next slide, we don't have a lot of time to accomplish this. So this is our timeline for the paper. We're right here in June. We have begun the writing process, and we're kicking off our section team meetings so that we can determine who's developing the different parts of each section. We'll invite the steering committee to review the process along the way, along with other INSC partners. And then we plan to publish, hopefully in time, for the workshop in December, because as you recall, I believe Paul mentioned that what will come out of this perspectives paper will be information that will help guide the topics for the workshop. Thanks.
So much, Candace. So as Paul alluded to, we're on the move. We're raising awareness about this INSC, and we're also using conferences as an opportunity to hold sessions, as well as receptions, guided discussions, those kinds of things. And so just earlier this week, the ILC team returned from ASN 2025, the Nutrition 2025 meeting that the American Society for Nutrition holds. We had a booth there. Attracted a lot of attention. There's, as you can imagine, a lot of interest in infant formula and infant nutrition right now. And so that was a really fruitful opportunity there. Just next week, our two members, Paul Hanlon and Vanessa Castagna from our steering committee, are off to Boston for a fireside chat that they'll be leading at the Novel Ingredients Summit. And we also have another booth ILC does. So the executive director, Stefan Vidri, is going to be at Food Allergen Asia in Bangkok, which will be another opportunity to share the work that we're doing. And then we'll be off to ICN in Paris, where we'll have another booth. There's already a lot of topics that the program was just released this morning, actually. So I took a peek there, and there's, again, a lot of interest in infant nutrition. And then again, as Paul mentioned, IMGC in Aarhus, which is in September. We have an abstract that was accepted there, and so we're currently organizing that as well. And then we do have a planned informal reception, or it could be a guided discussion that will be at IMGC. Missing from this list is FASEB. Unfortunately, it was postponed earlier this week. That was originally going to be in July, but the organizers ultimately had to determine that it would be postponed. But we are keeping our eyes out. So as you'll see at that last bullet there, we are seeking suggestions for relevant conferences, events to participate in as well. I welcome those ideas. For example, folks have mentioned NASPGAN in Chicago, which will be in November, could be a good opportunity there. And again, the idea here is not only to raise awareness about the INSC, but also we want input on that workshop. We want that all the activities that come from the INSC to be beneficial to the field. And so we need a lot of perspectives there. So if you have other ideas and for conferences and events that you think that the INSC should participate in, please feel free to send them our way. So here's a list of our current members, but I do want to say we're continuing to recruit and are having many more discussions. Maybe from after this call today, there are folks on the call that would also be interested in participating. And again, I'll have a slide on how to get engaged with the INSC. But this is our current list of members. And again, when you go to our website, you'll be able to see that as well. Another way for folks to engage with the INSC is we have working groups. And so really the purpose is to support the INSC on targeted activities. So we have a communications and an outreach working group. And then we are also, will eventually be putting together our workshop planning group. And so really for those that are interested, the expectations for participation are pretty mild. I think we're looking at about a 1-hour virtual meeting every month as available, sometimes more if there's more that's needed. But folks contribute to tasks between our meetings via email as well. They provide input and feedback, especially when requested from the steering committee. Then they draft materials for the steering committee to review. And so this is to give you kind of an idea of what the activities of our working groups are. So first we have our outreach working group, which is helping us with stakeholder engagement, conference and event participation, and as the name implies, outreach. As well as helping us with partnership and funding and sponsorship liaising. Our communications working group is kind of like the content developers. And so they've, as you'll see in the next slide, they've been working very hard on getting the first launch of our website ready, so the content ready for that. They helped us select this beautiful logo that you can see in the bottom right-hand side. They helped develop that as well. And so they are working kind of on the words and the identity of the INSC with steering committee guidance. And then eventually we'll need to put together a workshop planning group, which will help with, as you can envision, putting together the agenda for the workshop, identifying speakers, helping with workshop logistics and coordination, developing the content for that, and then also, with the outreach working group and communications working group, working on ways to engage and get people registered. And so late breaking, this was just released, or it was just updated last week. we have a new website that it just launched. And so if you scan that QR code or you type inscoalition.org, it'll bring you to our website. I want to add that our website is a work in development. We still have plenty more planned pages. So keep checking back for more there. And it'll be kind of, our one-stop shop for anything related to the INSC in an easy to share location. I know some of our members who have been here since the beginning have just been sharing a flyer or a single LinkedIn post, which is not super ideal. So this is hopefully going to be a much better way to get other folks engaged and also be able to disseminate information about the INSC. So how do you get involved? Of course, as you saw, we have our outreach and communications working groups. That's purely voluntary. Anyone can join. We appreciate the extra help. Folks have been nominating themselves or a colleague for the workshop working group. Again, we have not launched the workshop planning working group. And I should add that will be by nomination only and for the steering committee's consideration. Not everybody who is nominated will be selected. We also want to make sure, again, that we have a mix of representation of sectors on that group. But that is still an option. And as the perspectives paper and the workshop develop, we are trying to plan guided discussions for folks to provide their input. I understand not everyone's interested in outreach and communications and would rather get their hands into the science. And so really these, we're still kind of working out the details of how we want to do that. And not everybody can attend a conference. And so as we develop these activities, we want as much input as we can get. As I mentioned earlier, there are areas where consensus may be needed, or there may be areas where there isn't any consensus, and we would really appreciate everybody's perspectives there. If you are representing an industry, you can support the INSC and become a member that way. We have a 3-tiered funding model for folks that are organizations that are in pre-revenue, under 100 million, and then over 100 million. And of course, that's my contact information. I'd be happy to talk to anyone about anything, not even, either other opportunities to participate in the INSC, or if you have feedback or questions that you'd like to propose. Again, I'm not the content matter expert, but I am the facilitator, and I would be more than happy to discuss with you. And so with that, we have plenty of time for questions. That was perfect. It's always hard to gauge how much time these slides are going to take. But again, I wanted to thank you all very much. And you're welcome to ask your questions either by using the raise hand feature in Zoom. So that's under React. And you can also just physically raise your hand. I'm scanning the room right now to look for if anyone's got any hands raised. And then you're welcome to also type them in the chat. So with that, I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions, or if my colleagues online want to add anything that I may have forgotten that you'd really like to mention. Bert, please go ahead. I see your hand up. You are muted.
Sorry. Still, after many years since COVID, I haven't learned how to operate Zoom. Sorry for that. Well, I just want to thank you for the presentation and congratulate you to this initiative. It's certainly a very important topic. The question of human milk and infant nutrition science and the impact on health and the regulatory implications linked to that are not only a national issue, they're very much an international issue. So I'm a little bit surprised that an institute that calls itself international does this as a purely national initiative. And I think it's a missed opportunity. It's obviously too late to change. But I'm also surprised that you say you want to go to BKK and Paris and Aarhus with this. I wonder whether that's the right strategy, given that this is a national initiative. There's a lot of good research around the world. There's a lot of work elsewhere. And, I feel uneasy if you think from a North American perspective, you should be the missionaries for the whole world. I don't think it's a good idea. This is not how research and science works in the 21st century. Sorry to be frank.
No, hey, and Bert, definitely appreciate the feedback. And I think maybe just for a point of clarity, we are trying to recruit academics from all around the world. So we're not focusing on only looking at science from the United States. I think when we put this together, it has to start somewhere. And I think there's a lot going on in the United States right now. There's even, I would say, more going on in the US right now than there was when we started this initiative 6 months ago. So the intention is certainly to bring in as much international perspective as possible. And, we said like our first phase here is trying to get out through this workshop. When you start thinking about what that next phase would be and making it more international at that point would also be something that you could do. But the intention is certainly not to make it only in the US, it's to base the work in the US and still try to bring in those perspectives from elsewhere.
I'll also add that some of our members are also based in Europe and Australia and New Zealand. And so they also have a lot of interest as well. And again, I think this is just the beginning. We'd really like this to be a longer term initiative. Other questions? Hi, Catherine. Please go ahead.
Hi. Probably you are missing someone from Canada since it is ILSI US Canada, but that's along Bert's. But along the other line that Bert was saying is, how have you got buy-in from the other ILSI institutes? I think that's where maybe the international might, if you have representatives from ILSI Europe, from ILSI ILSI South Pacific, whatever, that China, that might help bring a little more of the international, because they would know within their ILSI family who are the right people.
Yeah, so maybe I'll reply to that, Catherine. Good morning. So I'm Stefan Widrede, ILSI Global Executive Director, also Executive Director for ILSI US and Canada. So I had a chance to present this initiative 2 weeks ago at the ILSI Europe Assembly. There's a lot of interest indeed, so they are aware, and we're discussing, how they could get involved. I know we have on the call also Jeff Smith, the president of ILSI Southeast Asia region, that I will meet in 2 weeks in Thailand, indeed, at this Asian Allergen Conference. There's also a lot of interest there. I think they're starting some activities of maternal and infant research. So we're going to look into how to expand. But again, I think that will be for the coalition also to discuss, when after the workshop that is planned in Q1 of 2026, what maybe are the next steps. So again, there's interest from our other ILSI branches, but it's not an ILSI initiated initiative. So again, that will be for the coalition to decide how they want to take it to the rest of the world.
Yeah, they just might help with funding when you're going for sort of big bucks to actually get buy-in from other parts of the world. And even with the companies, they aren't just centered in the US and Canada. Like they're not just centered in North America.
Yeah.
That they probably want to see buy-in from their scientists.
That's correct. Thank you, Catherine.
I'll also add on our last outreach working group, one of the first things they mentioned is, where's Health Canada? And so that is absolutely at the top of our list as well, with engaging our folks at Health Canada. Any other questions, feedback? Or did we do just such a good job that they have left you speechless?
There's a question in the chat whether we're working with the Human Milk Institute. So I don't know, Paul or Vanessa, if it is something you've discussed.
Yeah, I could answer that. I did respond in the chat. This is Vanessa. So we are in conversation with Lars over at the HMI, and we've had some good conversation. We're not directly engaged with HMI as an entity, but we are certainly aligned in our objectives of improving, human milk research science. We feel the need for this tripartite approach. It's a little bit different from HMI's approach, which is primarily academic focused, although they do, of course, engage with regulatory agencies as well. But we really wanted to drive this tripartite approach, engaging with NIH, FDA, USDA as much as possible in the decision-making process. And we also felt that it's really important to get industry input to identify some of the challenges that is potentially unique to industry that academic researchers might not understand. So we are aligned with mission, but we are, I think, a little bit different in our approach.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Thanks, Vanessa. Jeff, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just a few quick words. So I'm Jeff Smith, the president of INSC Southeast Asia region based in Singapore, where it's late on a Friday night. So greetings to everyone. And thanks to Stefan for the mention. So we have a lot of work in this area. Our institute has done, we've had a expert working group for about 15 years on MIYCN. And so we've focused a lot on that area. There's a lot of work going on in Asia generally. And in Southeast Asia, we've been leading some of that work. So we're very pleased to see this going forward. We see some of the practical issues of getting started, so we don't want to interfere. But there are a lot of scientists in this part of the world who are focused on these issues, and so we're very pleased to see this going forward. And we will try to see how we can be helpful. So you can also reach out via Cypress, or I can't put up my email address, but anyhow, I'm pretty easy to find at INSC Southeast Asia region in Singapore. So we look forward to adding to that global effort. As you pointed out, these are global issues. We have a lot of babies in Asia and Southeast Asia, and still growing population. So we very much appreciate going forward, and we want to see this succeed and become a global effort.
Thanks so much, Jeff. And yeah, please feel free to, I can always get you connected with Jeff as well, or if you can find his email, it's, as you mentioned, it's pretty easy to find as well. Other thoughts? See your hand up, Christopher, please.
Yeah, no, Chris is fine. So I may have missed this. I took a call from the nursery. I'm going to have to pop off in a second actually to pick my son up. But I guess you've got, I mean, I recognize many of the names on this call, a fantastic group of academics, researchers, industry, etc. But it's not exactly clear to me what you need from us. What do you need from me? How can I help? What's the action point at the end of this call? And again, apologies if I did miss it. I did have to take a call.
No, that's a great question. I appreciate that because it can seem a little unclear too. And so, Chris, are you representing academia?
Yeah, so I'm a professor of human microbiome research in Newcastle in the UK.
Thank you. Apologies, I wasn't familiar with your work. Yeah, I think I'll be completely fully transparent here. We're still trying to find a role for all of, especially our academic researchers. We can't have everybody in the steering committee, which would of course be where a lot of academics would fall into. And so for us, it's going to really be those guided discussions. We haven't organized them yet. We haven't we've thought about what questions we're thinking about and asking, and really what we want to get out of our academic community. But we're still in those early stages. And so I think just by what we were hoping to get out of this, by that, you probably got my email that was essentially a cold call saying, please register for this and listen to what we have to say, was really getting us on your radar. And I say yours and the other academic folks on this call, by registering, you're expressing interest, and that kind of gives me permission to then continue to reach out when we have a call for participation on, say, one of those guided discussions. This call started as just being a way to update our 17 or so members, and the steering committee and I ultimately decided we should open this up so that we can use this as an opportunity to also introduce ourselves in essence. And so as far as next steps after this call, I think really what it'll be, aside from sharing the recording and the slides, will be a way for us to kind of, like a e-meeting, so that we're on each other's radars, and so that when we do throw out that call for participation in our guided discussions, we've already got a network of folks. As you know, a lot of this kind of work spreads through word of mouth. And so that was really our intention. It's kind of like a networking event. I don't know if any of the other INSC members want to chime in there, but that was my main intention for this call.
Okay, and actually that's again very helpful to understand. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Chris.
I have a question because you say you're still determining the questions. Do you want help from academics with the questions we think you should be asking?
Yeah, absolutely, Susan. That's great. That would be, I see Paul nodding his head too. I think, again, we're just in those initial phases. We might be looking outside our focus areas with questions such as, how do you build consensus? Maybe going up, as far as those high level questions there. But we would love input on what are the questions we should be asking, whether it's within the context of regulatory initiatives here in the United States or looking globally as well. So.
Well, I think it might be helpful to share at least some draft of your questions. I think I feel the same way as Christopher. I'm not quite sure what you want from us.
I know. I apologize for the lack of clarity.
Yeah, and I think, Candace, I think you said it very well, that we're trying to get the word out and we'll be following up. So it's great to see that people had some interest in it. And maybe we'll solicit too. If you are interested in participating in additional calls in some of these topic areas, we'd love to hear from you, like respond back and say, hey, I am willing to participate in some of these discussions. We're trying to get as many people involved as possible that have this expertise as we start to build out some of those additional discussion sessions. So we are going to take your involvement in this call, and you're calling in as some at least indication that you're interested. But if you are really interested, just send us a note. That'd be great.
Any other thoughts, questions? Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, Jeffrey, just one quick comment. So sorry to concentrate too much on Southeast Asia, but the National University of Singapore has a huge effort, which has now been conducted over more than a decade. The Gusto projects of growing up in Singapore, where they've been looking at moms and infants now for more than 15 years. They have more than 1,000 papers. So there's a great deal of work coming from Singapore. But Singapore is somewhat of an anomaly in the rest of Southeast Asia. So we need to take into account the other parts, the nearly 700 million people in the region. So a lot of this counts for a lot of infants. And so there is data from Southeast Asia, not so much in the rest of the region. So building up that data is also an important aspect. We can send a link. A lot of that data is available for access, so people can do studies based on that Gusto data.
Fantastic. All right. Well, you do have my email address, since I sent that call out, and I would really appreciate, anytime you want to connect, you have ideas. My inbox is always open. If we didn't get to we log off and you just think of your question, you are more than welcome to pass that on to me, and I can pass it on to the right person to answer. Again, I want to thank you all very much for your time and interest. It's early days. So we appreciate your patience and your feedback, and I do look forward to hopefully working with many of you. So thank you all so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.